Thank you for being here. So appreciate you taking your time on this awesome, super hot summer day. And I want to apologize for the grill not being open. Sorry about that. We came up with this schedule before the grill knew kind of what their schedule was going to be. And this morning I was like, oh my gosh, people are going to have their beer and wine and their burgers. So our next talk, the last one in the series in September, it'll be on a Tuesday. So it will be open. So keep that in mind. So I just wanted to reiterate the reason I started this series. It was to really help an HOA that I live at transition away from toxic chemicals and synthetic fertilizers and move towards regenerative, healthy, non-toxic, like ecological ways of doing landscaping, because there's so many options out there. And so, to really educate and encourage the HOA. We do have a couple of members here tonight, so that's awesome. And the mindset shift has not been easy, as you can imagine. Everybody kind of knows with HOAs it can be really difficult, and there's very entrenched ways of thinking about stuff, and it's really about aesthetics. And so we're working on different potential kind of stepping stones for how we can get to the level we really need to get to so that we have more water holding capacity in the soil, more soil health, biodiversity, all of those good things. And but we have had some small victories, and we've got some new projects in the works, and so I still have a lot of hope. Been going for about a year on this, so it's good stuff. We're working on it. And I'm super excited about tonight's talk with Jonathan and Adrian of DuranGoats. They're going to be addressing what I believe to be one of the fundamental aspects of the reason that planetary health is failing, and also one of the root cause solutions for how we can bring health back globally. And that is reconnecting ruminant animals to the land. So the last talk in this series will be on Tuesday evening, September 26th. This is going to be here at the James Ranch at 6. And I will be spending a lot of time kind of doing a more global regeneration aspect, but speaking a lot about ruminant animals and their specific impact on land when they are moved the way nature intended. So when we see animals all over the land, for example, when you look out at this land, you never see cattle all over this land. And there's a really specific reason for that. So I'll talk about that in the September talk. So I also want to talk about being super grateful for my sponsors, everybody right here, and they are on here. I'm picky about my sponsors. And everybody is either doing regenerative stuff or they are supporting regenerative stuff. And we need more businesses and organizations doing that. So please check them out. They're amazing, and here are all of our speakers for the series as well. So I just want to do a little intro for Jonathan and Adrian. Jonathan is the founder and co-founder of DuranGoats. He spent his early 20s studying sustainable development at the University of Oregon while working as a wildland firefighter during the summers. After graduating and after 4 seasons of firefighting, the last of which impacted his own community, he moved out to Durango, Colorado, and a year later started DuranGoats LLC. His desire is to create an impact on the Durango community, helping to manage weeds and bolstering the fire defense in our vulnerable part of the country, all the while maintaining a sustainable and eco-friendly impact that will allow the influenced environment to protect itself for years to come. Adrian Lacaste, did I say that correctly? Yeah. Co-owner of DuranGoats, he discovered his passion for the environment while volunteering for a habitat restoration group in Southern California while working full-time in animation. By the time he was ready to make the career switch, he was also ready to leave the city. In pursuit of his environmental passion, Adrian traveled to different areas of the country, learning about sustainable food production, and accidentally discovered Durango's amazing sustainable farmers. And he found that managed correctly, goats can contribute to both habitat restoration and healthy food production. Adrian maintains a small dairy herd while using the DuranGoats boys to improve soil conditions and fire safety on a larger scale. So welcome, thank you so much for being here.
Before you guys start talking,
oh yes,
quick
switch.
If you could stand slightly close together.
Let's get real cozy. All right. Okay, who wants to wear it?
Its role in responsible land stewardship. Hit the button. Made a little table of contents, I think.
If it were.
Does it not go? Enter. There we go. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about so our overview. We're going to go through a lot of our work is working on weeds and kind of revitalizing the soil. Jonathan's going to talk about fire mitigation, and then we'll go through some additional benefits of goats. And then if we have time, I threw some memes in here, but we'll see if we get to those. Okay, so what is a weed? This is just kind of an arbitrary word that we use for certain plants. A lot of times a weed is something that grows in disturbed soil, which nature abhors a vacuum. So anytime you have just bare earth, something is going to find a way to grow in there. A lot of those are what we call weeds. And everything we do is kind of built on disturbed soil. Construction, infrastructure, building destroys the soil. Even like most agriculture, we're kind of tilling the soil every year. So that's just creating the perfect environment for weeds. And then weeds are like usually very aggressive, so they're spreading. And this is something Katrina said, which stuck with me. A weed is a plant in a place near a person with a problem. It's not really the plant's fault, but go to the next one. So what are these problems? La Plata County has a noxious weed list, which you can go on their website. And these are like, if you own land, you have to do something to take care of these weeds. They call it an alien plant. And then these are their criteria. It's either invading economic crops, whatever that means, or native plant communities, poisonous to livestock. It's spreading detrimental parasites. And I mean, it's pretty much the same. It's just disturbing either the natural ecosystem or the agriculture that's trying to happen. These are like usually what people hire us for, like additional reasons. Certain weeds are allelopathic, which means they're putting something out into the soil that prevents other plants from germinating around them. A lot of mustards do that. Sometimes they're just spreading all over someone's yard. Like, if someone has a lawn and they have we had a job where there was just knapweed that was trying to invade the lawn, so we hit it with the goats to kind of keep it from spreading. People just don't like how they look sometimes. Jonathan will talk more about the fire, but certain weeds kind of create a bigger fire risk, especially cheatgrass, just because it grows really early and fast in the year and then dies, and then you just have a bunch of dead grass that can just catch fire. And a lot of times that cheatgrass is growing under like Gambel Oaks. So it's just like creating the tinder to spark a larger fire. But like with cheatgrass, the seed is only viable for a couple years. So if the goats come in and keep it from going to seed, within a few years you won't have any more seeds and you can kind of manage it. Some weeds just get too woody and tall to mow, and that's something the goats are very helpful for. I know some people have an issue with like willows or cattails that are like taking too much water or like clogging up a ditch. And then certain weeds are like foxtail. We've had our dogs get like foxtail seeds stuck in their paws, and their paws can get infected, and that's happening to a dog. That could be happening to any other type of animal. So yeah, that's what goats are for. And so then you bring a goat in, and they can clear it all out, and they just turn everything into goat poop. And goat poop is like really good for the soil. So you're kind of you're eliminating a problem and turning it into a solution. So, okay, and these are some like specific things about goats that make them good for controlling weeds. Most plants, there's a quote, I forget who it's from, that he said, animals are just something plants invented to move seeds around. plants were here first. And usually, yeah, an animal will eat a fruit or something, and then they'll go wander off, and then they'll poop, and the seed will come out, and it's in a bed of fertilizer, and then it can just spread wherever. Goats specifically have like the way they like chew the seeds, and then the enzymes, like the specific enzymes they have in their stomachs, basically reduce the seed viability, so they're not pooping out the weed seeds. So, you know, I think kochia and like pigweed are going to seed right now. The goats can just eat those seeds, and then you're just like, you've eliminated all those seeds. And, you know, one weed can make like 10,000 seeds sometimes. They can eat things that others can't. That again has to do with the enzymes. So these are things, we've had them eat hound's tongue and knapweed. Those are things that like a horse or a cow couldn't eat. Goats they just don't care. They will eat anything pretty much. I know I've read a lot about leafy spurge too, which is I think a bigger problem further north. And goats are like the only thing that will eat that. They're browsers, so if you have like weeds mixed into like a field of grass, they're usually going to go for, they kind of like to eat above their knees. So they will eat like the flower heads and the seed heads off of the weeds. And that's kind of the first thing they'll go for. And because usually people are trying to encourage grass to grow rather than a bunch of weeds. So they will eat the grass, but grass regrows from like a lower point. So it can the grass can kind of outcompete the weeds over time. And then this is kind of the main thing, is that the weeds, like I said before, the weeds are growing because you have disturbed, dead soil. Nature wants something to be there. The weed is kind of like the first responder to grow there. If you're just like spraying it or just mowing it, like you're not really, the soil is in the same condition that is leading to weeds. So the weeds are going to keep coming back. So what the goats are doing, they're kind of accelerating the process of like adding organic matter to the soil, making the soil a healthier environment for more healthy perennial plants to grow. Yeah, and then I think I just put a diagram of the, oh yeah. This was white tops, which is a type of mustard weed out here. And this is what they can do in like one day. And that was even like a little, there are like certain good times to hit weeds, and I feel like we were a little late on this one, but they still knocked it out.
How many goes?
We've got 39.
Oh.
So this was, I don't know, a month ago. So.
How much acreage is that? Like an acre or?
That's not an acre. We usually have to like target,
Yeah.
you know, you kind of want the animals condensed. That's part of like the targeted grazing. Because you want them to eat down everything evenly. And because certain weeds, like certain like thistles are like not necessarily the first thing they'll go for. Or they'll go for like different things first at like different stages of the plant growth. But when they're in a confined area, they'll eat everything down evenly. So usually what we do on a job is like we'll have pens that we kind of set them up in a different pen every day or two.
That's probably between 7,000 and 10,000 square feet.
Okay.
Yeah. This is what I was talking about with grass. Grass kind of grows from that first blade that comes out. And so what we usually try to do is like not have the, like they'll eat the top off of it first. And that doesn't really hurt it too much. It can keep growing. So we try not to graze too far below that point.
Is it like if you get like 3 bites, it can mess up the ability?
It's just easier for the grass to grow from that point.
Yeah.
And if you go below that point, it has to like regrow from like the rhizomes.
Yeah.
So yeah, are you watching them eat? Like,
We're checking on them like
off?
once or twice a day. And we kind of know, like, based on how dense the plant growth is, how long we need to leave them on a certain area. So, yes?
The height of that illustration of that plant, how high would that be?
Oh, I don't know. This was brome. I think this was supposed to be brome grass.
A couple of feet?
No, that first blade is usually like, that's like about that high.
Oh, off the ground?
It's usually pretty low.
Oh,
Yeah, and different grasses are different.
so you're showing what they actually eat would be the upper part?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what they go for first, because they like to eat higher up.
Lazy eaters.
Yeah. And this was just a silly meme. Lamb's quarters is one of the weeds we have out here that is basically quinoa and has edible leaves that are as healthy as spinach. But it's just weeds, just a lot of time it's kind of a cultural interpretation more than...
I don't plant spinach. It's just growing in my yard.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. Mandy, do you want to do the buttons? Because I'm the microphone.
Oh, right.
Yeah, let's do that.
On this part, we're going to be talking about fire mitigation. I'm going to kind of just generally go over fires, fire mitigation, bring around terminology, and a little bit of bringing in my history with firefighting, and then apply it to the goats. So wildfires, they're not just natural, they're actually very necessary for our ecosystem to function. And I've actually brought this bandana that you guys can pass around, and on each corner there's two different creatures that are reliant on wildfires for their species to exist. I got that bandana back in Oregon, but there's still certain ones of them that apply to here, like the ponderosa, camas, and lodgepole pines as well. I'll get into that, but it's very important for the ecosystem. You can kind of think of it as our kind of current state of the volcanoes erupting and then Earth kind of coming in from that, and like a terraforming process from that. So you're just kind of seeing that on a minor scale every time a fire goes through. If you want to jump to the next one. So who needs wildfires, lodgepoles, and ponderosas? They need fires to actually basically hatch the pine cones, and they need high heat in order for that to happen. Camas is reliant on it to have just stronger growth and like be able to colonize better. It's a local plant in the area. Black fire beetles need it to survive. Truly everything else in the ecosystem, as I said, you're looking at this forest picture, and it's like this is just forest standing on forest on forest. And, when you have overgrowth start to happen, then some creatures can't get to certain foods. So mule deer are also actually reliant on that. And so when fires come through, it reveals certain things that they prefer to eat. And it'll just clean up the forest floor, and particularly in well-managed forests is the key. So fire is not a fire is not a fire. What we don't want is, you hear people talking about like a hot burn or a heavy burn, and what we want is like a healthy burn. And the difference there is just a large amount of fuels, unmanaged area, basically it often happens when natural process has been interrupted, and that can mean anything from fencing that we put up to just us chasing out deer. You can hear stories of what this valley up here was like, some 10, 20 years ago. And, now we have a small elk herd that travels around of 30, 50, maybe 100. And before, it sounds like it was in the thousands. And so what they would be doing is they would be kind of doing this natural process of creating this fire mitigation. But because we don't have that, we have to find alternatives. When you have a healthy burn, what it looks like is it basically it will knock off the top, everything on the top, but it's not raging. And you can see the differences between the fires here. This is just creeping along the bottom, whereas this is just lighting on fire. These are even hitting trees and not igniting trees. It takes a lot of energy for it to ignite a tree. And then if it's doing that, it's burning deep. That means it's burning through the whole root systems of all the plants. It's killing off all the mycelium, all the microbes in the soil. And I don't believe I actually included some pictures of this in the slides, but there's actually really interesting, there's an interesting study on grazed land versus ungrazed land. And they basically had identical plots of land in eastern Oregon, so high desert, very similar to our environment. And they burned them both off after 10 years of grazing. And the area that was ungrazed burned everything through the system, and then just turned into cheatgrass, which invites more fires. So it's, that you're basically creating a fire-friendly environment in a very toxic way because you don't have those natural plants there. And, cheatgrass dies off so fast, nothing can colonize those areas, so then nothing can eat in those areas. You lose your biodiversity. On the other side, the grazed land, they burned it off, and those exact same plants grew back. It actually retained the memory of what was there before. So it's very, very interesting how potent that effect can be. And that's something that, I find very interesting. It's hard to, push that on people because people are like, well, if the fire came through, then that's that, but, as having had my community affected, it doesn't take long for it to start to rejuvenate, but it can rejuvenate in poor ways, especially in Oregon where they're just going to log everything out and then a bunch of invasives come in. And so why do we have these effects? Is poorly managed land. That goes into several categories of making sure we're properly doing fuels reduction and not just waiting for the fires to happen. I spent 4 seasons as a wildland firefighter, and it took my first fire to realize how absolutely obtuse the whole process is, and how we're, just funneling money into Band-Aid solutions instead of actually just taking care of the land and and then the land takes care of us. It's like funding a military industrial complex instead of peace negotiations. So we're encouraging people and our clients and just everyone in Durango to have peace negotiations with your land and to care for it, and it will care for you back. Same one. As far as fire mitigation goes, there's a couple of things that we recommend. The first thing is preparing as far as you can in advance. When's the best time to plant a tree? It was 5 years ago. Next best time is now. Good things to do are separations for fuel, flame breaks. Example of this was a burn off we were doing in Idaho, and so that tree is, sorry, not the trees, the road. The road right there is a substantial flame break. You know, and before this, you know, we're not just like walking down the forest lighting it off. You know, it's all prepared and everything, but we will often trim back, remove the fuels on both sides of the road substantially in certain areas. And then of course, you know, like when we're in this situation, we're watching. But not just having the road there, but also that gap of the fuels, like, you know, thinning out the fuels after that break is very important. And then eliminating ladder fuels. So there's two examples of ladder fuels here. First off is, you know, the diagram up above, where you can see how if this plant here catches, then it catches that, which catches that, which catches that, and then it gets into the tops. And when a fire gets into the treetops, it's called a crown fire. Everyone get out. No firefighters on deck. You're miles away. You're miles away. And so, you know, that's when fires get out of control. So if you can imagine though, this plant here burning on this side of this tree, it can't catch that. So you can actually see these trees, even though despite all this fire going on, these trees are not burning. And that's because we eliminated the ladder fuels and prevented those, you know, those flame lengths on the bottom they could be like anything from like, you know, 6 inches to a couple feet on like the woodier stuff, but they're not reaching the treetops, which is the most important thing. And then, yeah, so fuels reduction is very key, basically preventing fuels from burning heavily. You know, you can see certain areas right outside, just like right here. This is just, you know, there's a lot of fuels right there, very dry. You know, those are fire dangerous areas. And then, of course, you can see it right here. Those fuels lead right into the scrub oak, and then it can catch the whole tree. And then as far as defensible structures, so the base behind all of this is that if a fire comes, it's less of an if, it's when fires come. They are historically, you know, going to be all over the place. And, you know, eventually they will just come close to your home. Firefighters use triage. And so basically, if you're not familiar with that term, it's a battlefield term of where you save the people that can't be saved. So if your home is defensible and your neighbor's is not, they are going to flag your home, and then they're actually going to put more effort into your home. They're actually going to come to your home and they're going to cut down some more trees around your area. And but that's depending on it already being defensible. And then as far as like defensible structures, things that that I just recommend that are completely outside of the goats are, you know, basically creating flame breaks around the house. So that can be gravel around the house or, you know, whatever it is. And steel roofs are very important because sparks will land on them. And then the big thing that people don't realize that, you know, happened to us in Mackenzie Bridge, Oregon, was that you don't expect to run out of power. So having a generator on deck hooked up to your pump, because if you lose your power, you can't pump, can't put your sprinklers out. You know, it doesn't matter how far ahead you think it's coming. That's super key. You know, I've heard someone told me about having solar panels and batteries hooked up to their pump. I conceptually think that's a great idea. I have not confirmed that or fully I'm not sure if there's like some kind of loophole. Should work though. Can you jump? So bringing in the goats. So this is an awesome picture. This is mind blowing right here to me. So, you know, on this side, you can literally see that, so it goes from ungrazed sagebrush. This is an aerial photo of a fire coming through farmland, and it goes from ungrazed sagebrush, which is obviously it's burning pretty dark there, and then it starts to peter out a little bit into it starts to not burn as heavy in the ungrazed seeding area, just because there's not those heavy woods. But then look at that difference as it hits. That's a fence. That's a fence, and it just peters out into this mosaic. That's a healthy burn happening right there. And then even in areas like here, it literally stops at a fence. And it literally stops going here. And that's just what happens with grazing in grasslands and fires. And that's often what fires are doing, is that they're just creeping along. They'll creep along until they find the substantial fuels. And this is another photo here. Very blurry, but you can tell what's happening there is that just the fire was burning, and then it hits, when you hit grazed land, it just isn't very naturally fire defensible. That's a mixture because the grasses are able to have extremely deep root systems, so they're able to pull water, and they're also, a lot of the excess of them is basically it's like pruning your trees. You're like, if you think of eliminating your ladder fuels and such, or like pruning a tree, the same thing happens on the scale of a grass. If you prune it back, it's gonna start to grow deeper roots, start to really bolster the growth, and have more. It's going to become more fire defensible. And so this is an example of an area where we brought the goats in. So this is where it was, what it was like before. It was just like very dense foliage and forests underneath. And then when we brought the goats in, they cleared it up. And so you can actually imagine if a fire is creeping in through here, like I don't know who has a fireplace and who uses oak logs. I love them because they burn hot, but it is a pain to get them lit. And these things, like if a fire's going through there, it's not gonna light up. Granted, this person does need to do some additional thinning on these oaks, but it's substantial. Whereas like as far as ladder fuels go, if you're reducing your ladder fuels, it will go from being able to climb these into the canopy to just going across the bottom. And a good thing about this, about using goats, is it's a regenerative fire defense. So you're not just like taking from the land. You're not just like eliminating fuels. You're not just ripping out plants, throwing them into a trash bag, and removing fuels. What they're doing is they're turning it into manure and fertilizing the ground, and encouraging the plants that you left behind to grow stronger. And what you're doing is you're teaching plants, especially like the Gambel Oak is a very common, it's a very common fire mitigation need in this area. I know I just called that tree a scrub oak, and I actually don't like that term because it's got a negative connotation on like what it is. It's like you can find Gambel Oaks that are big and strong and like full-fledged trees that are creating all this shade, a whole habitat in their treetops, all of this water retention down below through their deep root systems. And what you can do is you can teach these oaks how to grow. So when you start pruning out the bottom layers, it basically encourages the top to grow because that's where it's having success. So then it starts to create this canopy, which not only is creating a difference between your bottom fuels and your top fuels, but it's also increasing water retention. And it's, so you're basically, really allowing waters to, like you're creating a very fire defensible space by allowing water to really soak into the ground and stay there. I was just at a friend's place today with a heavy, it was kind of like this orchard look. in his area where we had brought the goats previously, and it was just so green. It was humid in there, especially in this time of year when like we're seeing, and it's not like he's put any water into it. It's just growing that way.
This is a before picture. So if you, before or after. One goat turned into a dog. Yeah, it happens sometimes. So that's like mainly, those two things are mainly what we are hired for. But from having goats, we've discovered some other cool things that they offer. Sometimes we're like in town and kids from the neighborhood come up, and I mean, we've even had like middle schoolers like show interest in something. So they can just kind of bring people out and people get excited, and yeah, it's like an education opportunity for even teenagers. So we've done a couple weddings. The goats were flower girls at this one wedding.
They eat the like $100 flower.
Oh, they got like, she's trying to eat the. So yeah, they're just kind of like more fun than a lawnmower. Yeah. Yeah. And then this is also, like I said, I have the dairy herd, and goats are just like an amazing way to have a sustainable food source. Most of our calories are probably coming from like factory farmed grains and animals. A goat can just like eat weeds that are just growing anywhere and turn it into milk and cheese. And cheese just makes everything better. And then yeah, goat milk is like a little more digestible than cow's milk. Cow's milk has like an A1 protein that a lot of humans can't digest. Goats don't have that. And cows are kind of limited to what they can eat, mainly grasses, whereas a goat can just eat absolutely anything. And then like as a meat source too, I know there are some like places in, I don't know if it was in like Sweden, I saw this documentary where, the town just has like a herd of sheep that go around and they knock down all the weeds and everything. And they're just kind of shared by the town as like a food source. And just like the potential, I'm doing this and then I see people like spraying weeds and I'm like, that could be cheese. And yeah, then it's like the more calories you're getting from like a local sustainable source, the less that you are encouraging the kind of destructive agriculture that most food comes from.
Yeah, and the goat's milk it's like
there's
everything.
Next.
Oh yeah.
Funny you should mention it. Let's just compare. I mean, cows produce more milk than a goat, obviously. But per cup of milk, it's got more of everything besides sugar. So yeah, it's just like a very healthy food source that we could be taking more advantage of, and that would be good for the land and for us, I think. So, oh yeah. In that mindset, I was thinking like, goats are kind of a realistic way to deal with the weird times we're going through. And I don't know. The Matrix, that would be nice to be easier. But yeah. This is subjective. But yeah, I think that's it. I think we just have a silly.
Which one of you guys is a sci-fi buff, or both of you?
Probably both, right? Yeah. I'll take the blame for this one. Yeah. But Yeah, I don't know. Any questions? I think that's the rest. That's the.
Oh,
We're done with the actual content of the presentation.
What about the species that you utilize and why?
Oh, like the breeds. So most of our goats right now are Sanins, and that's just because they're kind of the best for dairy. They produce the most, and it like tastes better. And so we work with Breed Mesa Creamery. That's kind of how we got our start, is that she breeds all of her does in the winter. And then when they have babies, the baby girls, they have a job at the dairy. The boys don't have a job. So we are adopting them. It's that stat about like.
Yeah, the life expectancy of a male dairy goat in like the Western world, meaning like, US and UK and stuff like that, is about a week.
Oh.
Yeah.
They'll castrate.
They just butcher
Get
them.
butchered.
They just kill them right off the bat.
Because it's just
it was
another,
It just would eat up your pasture. And goats have about usually like two babies per birth, so like 50-50.
They multiply.
Yeah, so you would and they don't produce enough meat truly for like for a farmer to make it worthwhile.
So we are introduced. There are like meat breeds that we have introduced. Some of those. Because then you're just like turning weeds into a food source. But yeah, we're just kind of adopting goats that don't have a home at this point, just giving them a purpose.
So, what's your business proposition, or are you a for-profit business? I mean, it looks like, what do? Rent out the goats?
Yeah.
To a farmer or somebody? Okay.
Yeah, just
And
mainly.
do you do any milk? I mean, what
DuranGoats is, we rent out the goats.
You rent
So instead of, that's why I was showing like, if your weeds have gotten to a point where you can't really mow them,
Yeah.
you can hire us. We'll bring the goats, and then we charge a daily rate to.
How many goats do you have?
We have 39 right now.
Okay.
Yeah,
You say 39 and a half?
39 right now. We have a little puppy who kind of looks like a goat, so you count her as a half goat.
Do you do
Then I have like 3 milk goats right now.
Like separately.
That's a separate thing, because that's a little bit. When they're hitting like weeds and fire, like we're really trying to, like especially with fuels reduction, we're kind of trying to get rid of the fuels, like really knock it down. We don't mind if the boys get a little hungry for a day, because then we're bringing them to the next job. The milk girls, they will get very upset if they are hungry, and I don't want them hungry because I want them very well fed.
And it tastes better when they're grazing on grassland, rather than with the boys. We're almost rarely on grassland. It's usually a mixture of grassland and weeds.
Yeah.
Or like
There is overlap. Sometimes I brought them to a job where there's just like a lot to eat, and I'm just like, they're like kind of a turbo gear.
Yeah.
So if you have a job, somebody has a property, but they need a specific area, you set up a hot wire or something?
Yeah, we have a combination of electric fencing and like metal panel fencing, and each landscape kind of calls for a different combination. But yeah, we pen them in.
And they defy physics too. So it's like you have those like steep slopes that like you can't do anything on. And
For a lot of like fire stuff, it's like
Do you have solar electric?
Do we have what?
Solar electric?
Yeah.
Works great.
Yeah.
You need to charge it like once every couple weeks. Truly.
I mean, that thing is.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Did I understand, so if you have healthy soil, weeds won't grow there, or are less likely to grow
They're less
there?
likely because a lot of weeds can't compete as well with like if you have like perennial grasses. Like weeds mainly like just bare open ground.
And then, so when you take your goats to clean up weeds,
Yeah.
if the weeds have been treated with poison, does that change anything, or?
Somebody hit it with Roundup, so.
Yeah, we try to avoid that.
Yeah, we usually wait a year, and that's also another really big reason of why we keep your dairy herd separate. is because of that risk and just, residual chemicals in the soil that don't break down for years and years. But the boys, we are planning on butchering them, or a couple of them, at the end of the year. So we are conscious of that. So our rule is kind of like, if it's sprayed this year, we don't graze that land. We can do it next year though. And it's better to like not spray and to like wait for that next year. That's kind of a big thing that like Katrina Blair was talking about with Be Happy Lands is like weeds aren't that bad. In fact, you can eat most of the weeds. Mustards, the lamb's quarter, dandelions, thistle. You can even. She taught me this trick of picking off a bunch of thistle leaves, any of the thistles, and then grabbing an apple, throwing it in a blender with it, and blasting it. That's another cool trick to impress middle schoolers.
You can actually, I haven't tried it yet, but I read that they used to use the thistle flour to curdle the milk to make it into cheese. So I really want to try that next year.
I was going to say on the issue of bringing them in and it's been sprayed, one of the things I was talking to Katrina, I think you about as well, is like you could do some mitigation aspects of like spraying a compost tea or a fungal soup, and that the microbes help to break down those petrochemicals and the poisons. Mm-hmm. So that can help speed that up to heal a bit before you bring in the goats, so it's safer for them too.
The fungus can break that stuff down, which is pretty wild. And so if you can build healthy soil, it'll just break down the poisons for you. Another thing I wanted to get a little bit into, I forgot about it when I was talking about that study where that the two burns, and the one that that erupted in cheatgrass after, and the one that came back to its own. There is, if you look up like USDA, like how to treat all these weeds, there's a PDF on like for each weed that you look at. It'll be one of the first things that pops up on Google. And they like go through all the different methods, and they repeat themselves over and over again, where it's like mechanical methods almost never work because you're disrupting the soil. And that means, grabbing a tractor and, tearing everything up and stuff like that. They think that like poison is great. Then the one thing that this is just getting to a theory of mine, but they say that like burning does not work. And so it makes sense if it's unmanaged land, because if you did a prescribed burn on it, then it would erupt into weeds, like we saw with that cheatgrass, or the cheatgrass example. But on the other hand, if it's well-managed grazed land, then by my thought, then if you did a prescribed burn, those same plants would come back, and but it would also destroy the seeds in those areas, because you can destroy seeds in compost if you have a hot enough compost pile. So like, you just have to, a fire would be more than enough to do that. But you might be able to rejuvenate that land with prescribed burns if you have managed land.
I was just going to say that's kind of back before we interrupted. I just wanted to do my talk on in September, but before we interrupted the regular way that predators moved ruminant animals, and that's what they're mimicking. And so you had more cool burns happening, like what we were saying is actually healthy. And what we have right now is massively unmanaged land, very disconnected from the animals that manage it. And so we have these crazy fires, super hot, and that's creating all these global aspects too. So as we start to unlearn those more industrial things, I mean, yeah, you go to USDA or whatever, and it's not this stuff, So.
Mm-hmm.
So what about the timing on, when you need to hit those weeds with the goats?
They're like every weed is a little different. So what we do is like, if a prospective client reaches out to us, we'll go to their land and like see what's growing, and then we'll figure out when we need to go there. Because it's also, there's so many different elevations here too. Mm-hmm. So it's like, we're hitting Canada thistle down here, and then we're hitting it at like 8,000 feet a month later. everything is just like,
Do you try to get it before it's gone to seed and like it's dying back? Or
Yeah.
Canada thistle
brown,
specifically,
brown?
and that's where everything is like, they'll like it at specific points. They really like it right before it goes to flower, and it has a little bud. And that's when the plant has put a lot of energy into making that, what's about to be a flower.
So it's sweeter, maybe?
I think it's sweeter, and yeah, then
It's
they'll
like
just,
protein, like
They'll
really,
eat
it's
that off
what
first,
the plant's
yeah.
putting everything into.
and then they'll rip off the leaves off the stem. And so they'll just kind of leave like a bare stem.
And for Canada thistle, that's actually important because it's they spread. It's a rhizomatic plant, so it spreads through its root systems as well. And so if you just go in there and you start chopping them down, willy-nilly, then it'll shock the plant, and it'll start to send these signals out to spread seed like crazy. And then it spreads it through this system, and you lose so much time in your ability to manage this because everything starts going to seed like crazy. Whereas if you, like when they have these stalks left over, it tricks the plant into thinking that everything's okay. And and so you usually want to, like with most plants, like if you graze them before seed heads have started to form, they'll just keep regrowing, and then there's the forming of the seed head happens. It's like either kind of like either nature's triggering it in some way. Either it's like this kind of natural process if you're kind of having a very regular year of maybe like temperatures changing, but also like drought can happen. So like drought can trigger seed, and we saw that this year in this last drought here. And then we even saw it like last year in the very, very early stages of the year. We had like plants going to bloom, months early.
You mentioned.
Sorry, wait, sorry. I don't know if he was ready.
You said that basically they just eat the leaves off of the plant, right?
The flower first, and the seeds first, and then they strip it.
For this, yeah.
Yeah, they're not full, like, I wish they were chainsaws, but they, like, what they will do in a lot of areas, especially they'll eat new growth, and so that's a potent part. But a lot of times when you're working with fire mitigation, it lets you take a next step. So like and you can look at like, any of the areas from like Durango Hills, up in like near Hesperus area, and it's just like these very dense, low Gambel Oak areas. You can't make head or tail of what to do with it. And I talked to, there was a different goat company that did some fire mitigation work out in Edgemont, and they basically brought the goats through 3 acres, and then they had sawyers come in from a company, and one of my friends is on that company, and he said it was some of the easiest work he had done. Whereas before, you have to make 5 cuts just to get to the bottom, and then you're gonna hit your saw on rocks, and you're gonna gum it up in the leaves. It's a whole process, but like when you see what you can do afterward, after the goats come through, it's just like, it's night and day. Yeah,
You're just seeing your cuts.
Exactly. It's just like there.
Like prep everything for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do they eat oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Would you like to go first?
You mentioned butchering.
Mm-hmm.
I belong to a co-op, and there is goat as a frozen. So is it more like frog legs taste like chicken, or is it goat?
It's kind of like
Sweet.
yeah, it's close to, it's a darker meat, so it's like I would say it's like closer to like between like lamb and beef, but it's there's just so much you can do with it. So that's my favorite thing. I used to work at El Moro as a chef, and so like, you know, cooking is a passion of mine, and, you know, people always complain about, like, oh, like, isn't goat, like, tough? And it's like, you just have to cook it longer, you know, just slow cook it. And that's
pressure cook it.
Yeah, pressure cook it, 4-hour cook it in a pot. And goat is the most eaten meat around the world. And that just like gives you a hint on, like, you know, like how much we have. I don't think we really evolved with cows. We evolved with goats, you know. It was much easier to like have a goat on a smaller pasture. And also, you know, goat milk is literally like the entire vegetarian diet. So it has everything that you need to survive except for B12 and iron.
It does have B12. It doesn't have vitamin C and iron.
Vitamin C.
Yeah.
So some very basic things, but like, you know, it's that nutritious for us.
Yeah.
So, and then when you translate it to goat meat, it's like you can literally find goat meat in like a dish or like a delicious cuisine in every single culture around the world. And it's just like, you know, having goat meat is like just to do your own tour around the world. You know, like I've made, you know, several recipes, Mexican recipes. I made birria tacos out of goat meat, and a lot of the times it'll be like, it might not be like that goat is on the forefront of, like, you know, like barbacoa is like often beef, but like it's often beef in the U.S. Down in Mexico, it's you know, it's beef, goat, you know, whatever. You can make, like, it's, you know, it's all over in anywhere from like Spain, like any part of Africa, you know, through Asia, like the Middle East, you know, you can find various different recipes of different kinds anywhere.
Got them talking about food.
Yeah.
Goats were the second domesticated animal. Does anyone know the first?
Woof.
The first is dogs.
Dogs.
Goats and sheep are like around the same time. Yeah. It was like 8,000 years ago.
If you eat that lamb's quarters and all those other greens too with the goats,
Yeah.
then you're going to get your vitamin C and your iron.
Exactly. Just chew on some pine needles.
Yeah.
Cook it on a cast iron.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, I was wondering if the goats eat the runners, you know, that come up from the bottom of trees, those.
Like from oak trees.
Yeah, oak trees.
Yeah.
Apple trees or any trees.
Yeah. If it's growing, they'll eat it. Unless it gets like too woody.
Doesn't that kind of speak to the co-evolution aspect too, where you're saying with like the Gambel Oak, that helps, you know, encourage them to grow this way instead of all the bit and weight
Exactly.
this impact, then they do all this crazy stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you graze it down on the bottom layers, then you can, you know, it'll encourage that growth up top, and then, you know, it'll stop growing down there, which is important for Gambel Oak, because, you know, that's why we call it scrub oak, is that it's like low hanging, it's, you know, all over the place. But as soon as you start to form that canopy, you can start teaching it to grow that way.
And what's the day rate for 39 goats to come in?
It's like around $400 a day right now, give or take.
Yeah, we're just trying to bred. Yeah.
And what would a time frame be on like a certain amount of acreage?
It always depends on, it's just every acre is different. So
Yeah.
that's why we come out first and
Okay.
scope it out. But it's 39, but a lot of them are like younger and they're getting older right now. So they're like just going through stuff faster and faster.
Okay.
So I find I'm like underestimating a lot of,
Okay.
Yeah.
or I'm overestimating how long it'll take.
And then next year we're going to be working with, it just like compounds with each year. So like we're, you know, it's hard to say just because of density, you know, we were just on top, there's a house now on top of Hesperus ski mountain, just off to the side. And it's like, you can see what Hesperus ski mountain looks like. It's just dense
yeah.
oak and brush and scrub. And so, you know, like that, you know, obviously it takes a lot longer, but like, you know, I mean, you know, there was that picture there of them knocking out about like 7 to 10,000 square feet of like, you know, when it's just like, you know, easy to munch down. And then, you know, like when we're looking at next year, we'll be easily working at like, you know, like closer to like between 10 and 15,000 square feet.
Questions? That's awesome, you guys. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.